It's hard to imagine a more harrowing tale of survival. A man adrift on the treacherous waters of the Sea of Okhotsk, struggling to stay alive for over 2 months, while beside him lay the lifeless bodies of his brother and nephew. This is the chilling story of Mikhail Pichugin, a Russian man whose tragic experience has left the world in shock and awe. Mikhail Pichugin, his brother, and his 15-year-old nephew embarked on what was meant to be an exciting whale-watching trip in the cold northern waters of the Sea of Okhotsk. The family had been looking forward to this adventure for months, unaware of the terrifying ordeal awaiting them. On their small inflatable boat, they were prepared to witness the majestic creatures of the deep, but what they hadn't prepared for was the sudden and violent storm that swept across the sea, leaving them at the mercy of the waves. The storm hit without warning, overpowering their vessel and leaving them stranded miles away from safety. With communication cut off and their supplies limited, they were forced into a nightmarish fight for survival against the harsh elements and the vast, unforgiving sea. Days turned into weeks, and the grim reality of their situation set in. The cold and hunger gnawed away at their bodies, and the hopes of a swift rescue began to fade. Tragically, Pichugin's brother and nephew succumbed to the dire conditions, their bodies succumbing to exposure and starvation. Left alone with their remains, Pichugin's will to live was pushed to the very edge. "I couldn't bury them at sea," he later revealed. "I couldn't let them go." For weeks, Pichugin endured this horrific reality, floating with the bodies of his family members in the small inflatable boat, a grim reminder of the fragility of life. The constant thought of seeing his family again, and the hope that a rescue team might eventually find him drove him to keep fighting each day, even when all seemed lost. He also employed a survival technique he had learned during his time as an amateur sailor, staying as visible as possible to passing ships. But with no sign of help, the days continued to drag on. By the time he was finally spotted by a passing fishing vessel, Pichugin had spent an agonizing 67 days at sea, clinging to life and the bodies of his deceased family members. When rescuers finally found Pichugin, he was barely recognizable. Emaciated and weak, he had lost nearly half his body weight. His rescuers described the scene as one of both relief and sorrow. A man who had clung to life by a thread, surrounded by the haunting presence of his deceased family. "We couldn't believe he was still alive," one of the fishermen recalled. "He had no energy left, but he still managed to wave for help." The rescue itself was an emotional moment. Pichugin broke down in tears, both from the relief of being saved and from the overwhelming grief of what he had endured. As news of Pichugin's survival spread, public reactions ranged from disbelief to admiration. Many people struggled to comprehend how someone could endure such a nightmare and still come out alive. Others praised his resilience and determination, calling him a real-life example of the human spirit's incredible ability to survive even in the darkest of times.